Good afternoon. This is the last time I will be addressing this issue with Mr. Lucas because, as is usual for Mr. Lucas, he resorts to shitty arguments, and I think by this point I have enough on him for this particular line of reasoning to show how disingenuous he is and how prejudicial his views are, to the point where they completely block his reasoning and his logic to make what he says very unsound. So this is from this morning's video. He says, "Let me clarify, and thanks for the response." You're welcome, sir. He says, "I'll use an extreme example to better illustrate my position." Well, that doesn't always work, because if you exaggerate specific elements of one case, you're going to be changing the fact pattern. My best example of that is in comparative fault, contributory negligence. The more at fault someone else is, the less they have to pay, up until the point where it flips and the other person is paying them. So if you exaggerate it, you change the outcome. But we'll go through it, and we'll see how well his extreme position lines up with reality, with what we're actually dealing with, and see if you can pierce through his prejudice and figure out where he's gone wrong. He says it's unethical for an attorney to argue, it's ethical for an attorney to argue that his obviously guilty murderer of young women is innocent. No problem there. Well, it depends. In court, he may not be able to argue that, and I'm going to tell you why. If his client is actually guilty, then he would be under an ethical obligation to not argue that his client was in fact innocent. The attorney may require the state to prove its case, but you can't lie. You can't lie in court. Attorneys can't lie in court. And the difference between what we're dealing with this attorney out of Marquette County is that he is making a public statement. He's not in court. He is not arguing in court. He is making a public statement. And you're flailing all over the place while you're failing to grasp that critical and crucial difference. But let's continue. He says it is unethical for an attorney to claim that all women should be murdered as a defense. Well, that would not be a defense. Defenses are actually listed. If this is a murder charge, then defenses to murder would be like self-defense. There's also justifications out there, temporary insanity. There are all sorts of justifications and defenses out there, but not one of those is all young women should be murdered. That is not a defense to murder. So maybe you're just misusing words, but that should be an indication to you that you have no fucking idea what you're talking about. But we'll continue. That's where we are, he said. I don't believe that's where we are. I don't believe that this attorney, Samuel Hall, said anything along those lines, nor did he say them in court. He says the attorney can defend the sheriff. Congratulations. Thank you for your largesse, Mr. Lucas. He didn't need your approval. He says the attorney crosses an ethical line. Which one? Which ethical line? Can you point me to anything in the rules of professional conduct? Anything at all. But he says the attorney crosses an ethical line when he doesn't defend the sheriff, but rather claims that all sheriffs should get a pass on their constitutional violations because of COVID. That's what he did. He's saying we shouldn't have to deal with civil rights violations right now. Well, is that what? I mean, that's a bold claim, Cotton. Let's see what we got here. There were two news outlets that reported on this story. The base group. Everybody else is just going to be copying, excerpting, restating what these two outlets said. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and the Associated Press. Now, I have both of them, and I have them highlighted. Nowhere out there, at least as far as I can find, is there a full transcript from Samuel Hall. But what does Samuel Hall say? Well, The Associated Press is the most condensed version of what he says. And no one was threatened with arrest, and an aggressive defense is planned, said Samuel Hall, attorney for the sheriff and the Marquette County Sheriff's Department. So what he is saying is that the allegations made in the complaint are factually incorrect. He'll get his opportunity to prove that in court, or not, but that's what he's saying. He's not saying anything along the lines of all young women should be murdered. Hall said the girls' messages caused distress and panic within the school system, and law enforcement acted at the request of school health officials in a good faith effort to avoid unfounded panic. Again, where is that suggesting or implying that we should not deal with this because COVID? This is the longer version. This is from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Sam Hall, an attorney for the sheriff, said the teenager caused distress and panic among other parents by claiming that she had contracted the coronavirus despite getting a negative test result. He's factually correct. That is a factually correct statement. Or I assume that she did cause distress and panic. Whether or not that arises to anything actionable is different. He says the case is nothing more than a 2020 version of screaming fire in a crowded theater, he said, referring to speech that is not protected by the First Amendment. Well, I would disagree with him on that point, but he may be able to make a good faith argument as to why that is the case. I don't know what his argument is, so I can't say it. But again, he's not in court. He is talking to the press at this point. It's unfortunate that the plaintiff brings this lawsuit now, while law enforcement should be able to focus solely on public health crisis we currently face, Hall said. It's unfortunate. He didn't say that they shouldn't or couldn't. He said it's unfortunate. He said we shouldn't have to deal with civil rights right now. No, he said that it's unfortunate. And he is allowed to have that opinion. It's not unethical for him to have the opinion that now is an inopportune time for the plaintiff to bring the suit. The plaintiff can bring the suit. I don't know what the statute of limitations on that would be. I think it's a 1983. If it is a 1983, then it would use the state's personal injury statute of limitations. I have no idea what Wisconsin's is. So, but, even worst case scenario, probably have at least 6 months. At least. So, yeah, she could wait. Maybe he has a point. I don't know. But he's certainly okay. And the lawsuit seeks what's called nominal damage and an injunction barring the sheriff from arresting, jailing, or citing. Oh, that's not what he said. But anyway, you can see that there is a world of difference between what Michael Lucas is trying to extremely example as, and what he is quoting the sheriff essentially is saying. What he's paraphrasing the attorney as saying. It's an entirely different thing. And again, it is not a defense, Mr. Lucas. He is making a statement. He is making a statement to the press. A defense is something that you raise in court. And he said ethical or not can be debated. It's not unethical, at least not under any standard other than the Michael Lucas standard. The Michael Lucas standard seems to be pretty much, well, if you're defending the cops, then you're being unethical. But that is not unethical as far as being an attorney is concerned. And attorneys have a very strict code of ethics that they are bound by. And if they violate those ethics, they are subject to pretty severe sanctions up to and including being disbarred, not being able to practice law anymore. And if you're disbarred in one state, you're going to be disbarred in every state, because every state that I'm aware of will look at you having done something bad in one state and say, well, you're just a ticking time bomb in our state. So they will just disbar you. If you're disbarred in another state, California will disbar you. He says, but you surely admit that's just piss poor counsel. No, I don't surely admit that. And that's the kind of language that attorneys use. Well, it's clearly a violation. No, it is. I don't surely have to admit that that's piss poor counsel, because he's not counseling. He is acting as an advocate. You counsel someone in private. You suggest a course of action to them. You advocate for them in public and in the courtroom. You don't counsel your client in the courtroom. You don't counsel your client in front of the news media. You advocate for them in front of the news media. You advocate for them in court. When you are advocating for them in court, if your client is on the defense, then you would be defending your client by advocating for him. So anyway, poor use of language on your part, Mr. Lucas, and you don't seem to understand what the fuck you're talking about. So you should maybe read what the attorney actually said before you go and start saying stupid things like that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great day.